Jealousy is the most dangerous negative quality on the spiritual journey. Acting out jealous behaviors, whether it's speaking ill of someone, trying to destroy their reputation, minimizing their opportunities, blocking their way to spiritual growth, can lead to severe karmic retribution. In this episode, we dive deep into the jealousy problem and we offer no less than 8 actionable strategies to conquer the green eyed monster of jealousy. So if you want to get rid of that painful jealousy thorn sticking in your flesh, watch this episode to the very end. My name is Abinaba and this is Spirit Matters, a show dedicated to helping modern seekers navigate their way from the turmoil and confusion of their spiritual awakening to a centered and healthy spiritual life in the world. Me and my co-host Vajan are meditation teachers with over 25 years of experience. And if you like our content, do us a huge favor by rating our show, subscribing, or leaving a comment. We love them and we read all of them. Okay, now let's dive in. Today we wanted to speak about jealousy. And obviously, jealousy is a problem in the spiritual life, on the spiritual journey, because it creates such division. And in the spiritual journey, of course, we're looking for oneness, we're looking for connection. And anyone who's ever suffered from jealousy knows how painful the sting of jealousy can be. And if you ever had somebody who's jealous of you, that can be a painful experience as well. And so we want to talk a little bit about jealousy. What is jealousy? How does it arise? And also we're going to offer strategies, both spiritual and psychological strategies of how to deal and hopefully overcome and conquer jealousy. So Vajan, what is jealousy? If I ask you, what do you see as jealousy and how is it problematic in the spiritual journey?
Yeah, well, I think jealousy is interesting because it's very complex. It's not as straightforward as, say, fear or even perhaps as doubt. It's got a whole bunch of different feelings that connect with it. So there's the feeling of fear, there's a feeling of loss, there's a feeling of insecurity. But the thing with jealousy is it's always focused on someone else. So you become jealous of someone else, of their achievements, of their relationships. And it's often coming from your own fear of that person surpassing you or transcending you, or of that person taking something that's valuable to you, or perhaps even just that person perhaps taking a relationship away from you if they're getting closer to someone that you would like to be close with. So, and as you said, it's a really painful emotion because it does cause real division and separativity. It destroys connection. And it's a very common human experience because I think it does have a very deep ancient background that when we are living in a tribal society, our relationships are very valuable. Like the closeness you have with the people around you are really important because they keep you safe, they keep you protected, they keep you nourished. And so when someone is coming in and getting in between an important relationship that you see as valuable, you're going to feel something. It's going to create some reaction within you because you're going to be worried about that relationship, that person taking that relationship away from you. Or if you've got a position of some status or hierarchy and you see someone coming through and they're a better hunter than you, or they've got more talent in this or that and the other thing, you can be fearful that that person is going to take away your status, your position in a society or in a group. So it makes sense why it happens. But the big thing is now that in ancient times, this was a real biological force that was warning us, hey, watch out, because if you lose your position, this could be fatal for you. You could drop out of society. You could become very vulnerable. But in our modern world, this is not actually a legitimate fear. If someone is transcending you or has better capacities in you as an actor or as a musician, whatever it is, it's not really ever going to prove fatal to you. You may lose a gig or a job, or they may get, some opportunities that you don't get, but it's never actually going to cause some catastrophic end to your life or your situations. So we need to first of all understand that it's not going to be a fatal problem in our modern day world, but we still treat it. It still comes across as something incredibly.
What about in the relationship world? If somebody gets jealous of your partner, for instance, and like that, there's murders committed out of jealousy, right?
Yeah, I always feel that's such a tragedy because it's an unrealistic strategy for success. Because if you have someone that you really love and your strategy is to be incredibly possessive and jealous of any of their friendships, of any of their relationships with other people, it doesn't bring about more closeness between you and the person of your love. All it does is pushes them away. It creates division. It creates fear and worry and causes all sorts of damage. So I don't
Yeah.
ever think jealousy is a successful strategy. And I think we're going to talk today about some of the spiritual strategies that we can use as an alternative way to approach life. Because I think
Yes.
for everyone who has really experienced jealousy, they've realized, okay, this is not a good way to approach life. And no one is consciously choosing to be jealous. It's something that is coming up from either within or without. They see a situation where they have an experience, and that causes this experience of jealousy to come to the fore. But I don't think anyone really ever appreciates it. And actually, one of our dear friends often talks about this, that a lot of the undivine qualities that we experience, we're happy to talk about. So if you're feeling a little bit, if you can admit to being greedy, or you can admit to being lazy, for example, like a lot of people say, oh yeah, I'm a little bit lazy. I find it hard to get up or get motivated. Like that's
Yeah.
perfectly acceptable to
Or
admit that publicly.
insecure or worried or
Yeah,
restless, or the
yeah,
most favorite one of all, perfectionism. And that's everybody's
yeah.
favorite negative quality. I'm such a perfectionist. I want to do everything
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah. At every single job interview I go to, I make sure I mention that that is my worst quality, my
Yeah.
perfectionism. But so, because all of these are internal, or they're a personal experience. Our laziness is our own actions and our own feelings, and it doesn't really impact on others. But nobody wants to admit that they're jealous, because
Yes.
admitting that you're jealous is admitting that you're throwing daggers at your friends, at your associates, at the people around you. So you'd have to be a very brave person to say, yeah, I really suffer from a lot of jealousy. With you, I'm jealous of you and you and you.
Yeah.
It's not really something that we've come to terms with. So
It's
that
it's
kind of,
it's it's connected to that what we talked about last week, betrayal. Because jealousy
mm,
is a form of betrayal. You're betraying the friendship. You're actually wanting the other person to fail, and we see betrayal as one of the lowest. You said that in Dante's
yeah,
Divine Comedy, it's the betrayers at the lowest level of hell, and so I
yeah.
think jealousy is very tightly connected to that. Don't you think?
Yeah, I think so. And yeah, so that's why it's hard for people to admit their own jealousy to others.
Hmm. No, that's true. So I have a story where I did admit my jealousy, and it's actually one of the strategies to conquer it, because although it is extremely hard, if you do it and you do it with the right intention, you pop the balloon of jealousy. It's just like poop,
Mm,
and it disappears. So I was in the acting school at the time, was a really young guy, but maybe I was 18, 19 years old. And there was one guy in my class who already was kind of famous as an actor. He came from a famous acting family. His parents were all television actors, and he had already starred in some big productions. There was magazine articles written about him. He was good looking, and in every way he was successful. And I was jealous of him when I came into acting school. I was, of course, a nobody. I had some acting talent, but no achievements. And I remember blowing the person up in my mind, like it became a godlike figure. And you feel this kind of almost obsession about the other person. As my teacher Sri Chinmoy, our teacher said, jealousy, the other person becomes your god, and that's basically, or becomes your guru. And that was so unpleasant. And I felt this is a wrong thing, but I couldn't help myself feeling jealous. And then my mom at some point said, just tell him that you're jealous of him. Just admit it. Just say it, you'll feel so much better. And there was one dinner that we had with our class one night, and we were all talking, and I just brought it up. I said, is anybody ever jealous? And I said, yeah, I'm actually jealous of this guy right here. And he was there, and people just kind of laughed about it, and I laughed about it. And that was it. And, after that, I never suffered from the jealousy again. So it is painful. It's like, oh, it's a little bit awkward. But I think if you find the right moment and the courage, it's actually a really good strategy for jealousy too. Especially if it's not really, it's not really deep rooted, let's say. It's something that you can pop like a balloon.
Yeah, it's especially if you haven't acted out a lot of jealous actions towards him, if you haven't been going
Right.
around and whispering behind his back and trying to destroy his reputation, or, perhaps
Right.
obsessively going to his house and peeking in his windows or something, then it's easier. Before you get to that point, you should admit your jealousy. And I'm really proud of
Very,
you. It's
very good point.
such a great thing that you did that. And then you see how a lot of these the undivine parts of our being, they grow in darkness. When you don't want to look at them, you don't want to bring them into the light of day, you don't want to discuss them, you don't want to even admit them to yourself. That's the perfect opportunity and the perfect environment for these type of qualities to insidiously grow and increase, and they become like a really deep boil that it's really, you can't think of a way to get rid of it. And you imagine getting rid of it's going to be so painful, so that you just want to
Yeah.
ignore and avoid the situation.
Yeah, and so it seems that in jealousy, it comes up especially in close-knit communities, right? So our
Yeah.
teacher, so Sri Chinmoy had to deal with a lot of jealousy among his close disciples when he was in New York. And he told about that one point that, so many people have jealousy and it's one of the most difficult and hard qualities to get rid of. And he really suffered in his manifestation and his mission with people who are jealous of each other because you can't really accomplish anything, right? There's no real teamwork if there's jealousy involved. And any close-knit community, I think jealousy is something that that will be present there, and that's going to be a big challenge.
Yeah, so I think any community or any organization where there's kind of a clear pathway to success, because in those situations you see who's moving ahead and who's falling behind, and so you see the people, and especially if they can be people that you are close to or perhaps were close with at some point, and if you see them moving ahead of you, that becomes a real ripe situation to develop jealousy towards that person, because no one wants to feel like they're getting left behind. No one wants to feel like someone else is going ahead and is better than them. Everyone wants to, for their own self-esteem, I think, wants to have this picture that they have some certain level of ability. And when you see someone else going and doing better than you and achieving more than you, that becomes difficult for people to deal with.
Good. Okay, so did you want to talk more about jealousy, or did you want to address some of the strategies already?
Yeah, I think let's go on to strategies because, yeah, I mean, we could talk about jealousy a lot, but I think for all of those who have suffered with jealousy before, they know what it feels like. They know that it's not a
Mm,
good thing. And I don't think anyone who lives through a real case of serious jealousy really looks back on that time fondly and thinks that that was a great strategy for success. I think people like get through it and like, oh God, I'm pleased that that's over, however it resolved itself. But we want to
yeah,
find ways to
exactly.
help people who are actually suffering from jealousy at this moment, just to try and shift their consciousness and shift the way that they're looking at a situation, because it's obvious that if you step back and look at things from a deeper perspective, and like we always touch on in our podcast here, is that we believe that we are not separate beings having separate experiences, that we are infinite consciousness here, manifest through all of these different forms, but the same consciousness that I feel and exists within me is having an experience through you and through this person and through that person. And so there's no need for me to be jealous of the deepest part of me having a different experience through another form. That would be ridiculous. And I always think
Yeah.
as well that if we look at it in the terms of the divine lila, the divine play, if I'm really jealous of someone else's role, it's almost like I'm trying to steal their character. It's like if I obsess about them too much and think, oh my God, they've got this and they've got that quality and they're doing this, it's almost like I'm imagining that I want to take over and be in their character, which is absurd. I have my own role to play. It's ridiculous
Yeah,
to
that's true.
think that playing their character would be more meaningful for me than playing my own character.
Exactly. It's something that reminds me. I wrote down something that Sri Chinmoy wrote about that, and he said we should be responsible for ourselves and let others be responsible for themselves. And in this way, everybody will have ample freedom to reach his goal. Once he reaches his goal, he sees that his goal is the same as others' goals. But sometimes in our spiritual life, a most deplorable things takes place. We feel that our goal is not the right one and others' goal is the right one. Therefore, we try to change our goal. By constantly changing our goal, we arrive at no goal. Which is what
Mm.
you were talking about, right? If you think
Yeah,
somebody else's goal, that's actually, yeah, that's what I want. But
yeah.
even in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says it's one of the main sins is to do another man's duty.
Mm.
Like we have our own duty to take care of. And if we do somebody else's duty, that's actually a crime, an inner crime.
Yeah, and
And so that's one thing, jealousy. Yeah, go ahead.
the most satisfying and most enjoyable thing you can ever possibly do is acting out your own role as well as possible. There is no other role that you'll find that is ever going to be anywhere near as good as your own role. So, this particular role that you've found yourself living out and stepping into is the only role that is going to give you full meaning and full satisfaction in life. So as like the sooner we can actually truly realize that, or we can take that from being an idea, but we can actually put it into practice, the better our life will become and the easier it will be for us to give up any envy or jealousy or any of these other qualities.
Yeah, exactly. So one of the strategies is, and this is we start with psychological strategies because they're
Hmm.
perhaps the most easiest, and they offer some short term relief from jealousy. Because jealousy can really feel like a stinging feeling, like somebody stung like a dagger into you or a thorn into your side. And one thing that Sri Chinmoy actually said would be a good thing to do is to make yourself feel that you are actually better than the other person in whatever you're jealous of, but you just don't want to show it. And this, of course, is a kind of a mental trick to kind of bypass our minds and vitals jealousy, but just to feel if somebody is a good singer, I'm actually a much better singer than they. I don't want to waste my time and show it. I don't have to show
Mm.
it. I just know it. And convincing yourself of this actually removes that jealousy sting.
Yeah, and I do like that because that's a very simple thing, and that's a thing that some people will naturally do anyway. Like you see some people where you share some good news, or someone else is talking about how good someone did in a particular field, and you can just hear or see someone's like, "Oh, I could have done that as well." I just
Yeah.
don't feel the need to do that at the moment. As though they're somehow better than this other person who actually had to feel the need to go and prove that they could do this, and so. I do find that one like very amusing, but I think it's also very effective. So
Yeah, it's effective. We feel it's still maybe a play of ego on some level, but it's better just to deceive yourself in that way than to succumb to jealousy. And perhaps,
mm,
because one other thing that Sir Chinmoy said about jealousy is that if you're jealous, then, like we said before, you try to destroy the other person's good qualities. And if you actually do destroy the other person's qualities, there's some severe karmic retribution. So there's Sri Chinmoy spoke about the inner punishment will be most severe. So if you actually do go ahead and destroy somebody's reputation or destroy someone's qualities or opportunities, it's not a good thing. So we want to avoid that by all means. And anything that can help us with that is welcome. Now, the other
yeah,
thing is one thing is to use jealousy in a positive way is to see that whatever you're jealous of in another person is something that you may want to achieve yourself. And this is
yes,
not like we said before that you want to change your goal, but for instance, I would not become jealous of somebody who is great at motorcycle repairment because that's not something that interests me. But perhaps I would be jealous of somebody who is an excellent podcaster because we try to be good podcasters. And so by noticing what you're jealous of in the other person can put you on track to say, this is actually something I'm striving towards, and using that jealousy as fuel to be determined to become successful in that way. But not in a negative way, not to destroy the other one's achievements, but just to say, okay, I want to become an excellent podcaster. I want to become a great actor. I want to become a really good soccer player. So I'm going to train and do my best so I can have the same success as the person I'm jealous of.
yeah, and that really speaks to. We can use any of these qualities, these negative qualities. We can actually take something positive from them if they help us sharpen our aim in life. Because that is one of the most difficult things, is to know exactly what we should be aiming at. Because we may have a general idea or a general feeling that we're hoping to move in this particular direction. But sometimes the specifics of exactly what or where we should put our energy and time is not exactly clear to us. And sometimes just by seeing someone who, if we have that pang of jealousy, it's like, oh, okay, that's good because that gives me some information. That gives me an idea of where exactly I should be aiming my energies to move forward, to grow, but using it to help with our own transcendence, our self transcendence, rather than trying to do it purely in a competitive or a destructive way against the other person.
Yeah, so the key here is to immediately recognize that pang and then to move in another direction. So don't let jealousy take you down, because eventually, if you do follow jealousy's way or lead, it will lead to destruction. You want to start destroying the other person if you go all the way with jealousy. But just to use that pang as the beginning of, okay, now I know I have this information, and now to use that in a positive way. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's great. And also realizing that jealousy does not actually, so if you take jealousy the negative way, it does not help you at all in achieving the goal. On the contrary, jealousy actually weakens you. It
yeah,
really invites limitation and ultimately destruction, and you become just worse in every way. So realizing that if you take the positive path, jealousy may help you get that information, but if you take the negative path, it will actually worsen you, and you will not come any nearer to the goal.
yeah.
And there's another very amusing thing. I think you find this amusing as well. A very, and you can do this with any negative quality, but Suchimoy wrote this as one of the techniques to overcome jealousy, is to write down before you go to sleep. He said, take a piece of paper, write down the word jealousy on the paper, and then mercilessly cross it out.
Oh,
And this crossing out of the word jealousy,
oh,
he said, psychologically and intuitively, it weakens this negative quality. So there's some aspect of you, I think it's in the subconscious, that sees you
mm,
crossing out the word and kind of responding, this is not something that I want in my life. And to so this actually, I tried this in my meditation classes a couple of years ago, where I had people write down, the negative qualities that they felt they wanted to transcend, and then just crossing it out. And I did this myself as well, and it really has this subtle effect. So you should really try it. Write down a word. It can be jealousy, can be insecurity, or another negative quality, just before going to bed, and mercilessly cross it out. And see yourself crossing it out. And it's a powerful thing.
that is, I really like that. I had not come across that idea before, but it totally makes sense to me. And I think people should be very reticent to dismiss the more subtle ideas, because the thing is, when you're dealing with your own jealousy or your own doubt or your own fear or any of these qualities, you don't really understand where they're coming from. So they're coming from the subtle plane. You can't, if you even try and follow your own jealousy back through to where the source of the jealousy is, you'll never really actually be able to find it. So it's coming from some indistinct, subtle place. And so doing something with a clear intention that is affecting is aiming towards that quality on a very subtle level, I think that's a very powerful way to actually try and stamp it out at the root. Like when we're talking about doubt last week, we are talking about like the seeds of doubt. You want to stop the seeds of doubt before they turn into these plants that start tangling themselves up on everything. And it's the same with jealousy. If you could get rid of that root that's causing the jealousy, and the root of that is really ignorance, limitation, all of these, and not seeing the world as it truly is. Like when we're experiencing jealousy, that's a sign that we're not truly seeing reality as it is. So it's a good piece of information that we know. Okay, if I'm feeling really jealous, I'm not properly aligned with reality. I'm not on track. So
Yeah.
yeah, I really like that idea though.
And there's another aphorism attached to this one that
Yeah,
Tsuchima wrote. I'm just going to read that out, because that's also a
yeah.
very cute and kind of very tangible way to get rid of jealousy. He wrote, there is a way to conquer jealousy. Take jealousy as a piece of cloth. Use your utmost power to tear that piece of cloth into hundreds of pieces. While tearing the piece of cloth, just think of all the jealousies you have. Your jealousy is bound to disappear,
Yeah.
which is very closely connected to the one we just wrote about. You just
Yeah.
feel jealousy is something that you can tear to pieces. And the great thing about when you conquer jealousy is the person you were jealous of, they become your dearest friend. All of a sudden
Yeah.
you feel a sort of inner remorse that you were jealous of them. And then you really want, you want to become their best friend, and you really want to love and give your love and concern and affection to the other person. So it actually I remember that when the person I was jealous of in my acting school, after that, he did become a really good friend, and I really started to appreciate him. And it's just such a relief when you're rid of that thorn in your side.
Yeah, and that really makes sense as well. That you can only really truly be jealous of someone if you actually want to have a relationship with them, or if you value them, or if there's some blockage of love or connection with that person. Because otherwise, they just end up in the huge number of people that you're indifferent to. So there's an infinite
Hmm.
number of an almost infinite for the human being. It feels like there's an infinite number of people in this world, and you can't have strong feelings towards all of them. And so you tend to only be jealous of people that you actually have some relationship with, like a closer relationship. And so often it comes in that when there's a blockage in the flow of love and connection between you and the other person. And then that gives rise to these darker emotions. So, yeah, so that's really nice. I do think as well that if you can conquer that and can reconnect with that person, it's going to bring about a really newfound depth to the relationship.
And so before we enter into the spiritual strategy, so summing up the four or the five psychological strategies was, one is to make yourself feel better, to play that
Hmm.
trick on your mind. A second is to take the positive side of jealousy, so take it as some information that points you, that sharpens your aim, and instead also realize that following the negative path of jealousy just makes you weaker and worsens you. Then the third one is to to write down the word jealousy and cross it out. I feel that it's a piece of cloth that you're tearing to pieces. So
Yeah.
there were like three psychological strategies. And before we dive into the spiritual ones, because I feel the spiritual strategies are the one that will have the long-term lasting effect of really rooting out jealousy from
Yeah.
your consciousness. So these are going to be the most effective in the long term. They're going to be more difficult, but you wanted to speak also about the idea of jealousy and comparison in today's world, right? With connected to all the social media we see around and comparing ourselves to so many quote unquote successful lives. Did you want
Yeah.
to go into that a little bit?
Yeah, I thought that was worthy of having a discussion around now, because I think sometimes now with the younger generation, so much of their relationships with people and with the world around them is happening in the online space. So previously, people were part of more communities in the real world. So you would be part of the local church, or you might be part of the local bowling club or the archery club, or some community where it had some clear organization and structure in the outer world, where people would meet up and there would be there, and those environments give rise to the type of jealousy that we've been discussing, where people have the opportunity to show their qualities and to move ahead, or to make you feel as though you're moving behind, or falling behind, or any of those things. But I think now one of the main places where people feel the sense of it's maybe a more subtle form of jealousy. Perhaps it's more towards envy or whatever it is, but it's the game of comparison. And the thing about in the past, the game of comparison was completely different, because it actually required you to leave your house. So for you to feel that you were being compared to someone else's life, you actually had to leave your house, go into the world and interact with other human beings. And there was something very real and organic about that, that you would actually see the person that you were going to compare yourself against. So you could see them in all their three-dimensional glory, and the sights and the smells and the sounds and the energy. And so you could say, okay, this is actually a real person. They have their own problems, they have their own weaknesses, they've got some strengths and they've got some capacities. But I think it was much easier to make an honest comparison between yourself and someone else when you actually knew these people, you'd actually interact with these people in the world. Like now we've created this whole industry, and there's a whole world of playing the comparison game, which you can do from the comfort of your own home, and watching these absolutely beautifully curated 10-minute long visions of someone else's life, and done in a very stylish and a very thoughtful way, with really nice lighting, and in these beautiful houses or apartments, living in cool places. And you see these people's lives and you think, wow, like this person's really got their life together, they really know how to live. It's like the proliferation of morning routine videos. It's like, wow, I don't even have a routine. And here's this person, he's up at 5 a.m. or 4 a.m., he's drinking this, he's doing this practice. And there's so many opportunities to feel as though that you haven't even really started your life yet. Your life is in the phase of, like, you're preparing to get your life going. And I think there's so many people now are actually living this experience where they're going through the motions of life, but they don't feel as though they've actually started living their life yet because they're still in the phase of getting ready to start living their life. And it can seem very wise to do that because you know you right now are not the person, you're not all that you should be. You're not quite enough to do the things that you want to do. So you think, well, now I should do a bit more preparation before I really, like, in a few years, when I start doing the thing, my big thing I've been talking to you guys for the last 5 years about. And so I find that this is something that's besetting a lot of young people, people early on in their careers or their lives, where it's very easy to see these beautifully curated visions of someone else's life, and you're comparing the on-screen curated life that this person's living with your behind the scenes, warts and all, um, life that you're actually dealing with. And those two things, that's really such an unfair comparison, and I find that that's such a tragedy for people now, because in the past, like we said, you compare yourself to the real world and the people around you, and normally you'd get positive feedback from that. So if you were a good singer and you came from a small town, it's very easy to be one of the best singers in your town, or the best runners, or one of the better football players, or one of the better whatever it is. So as a young person coming through, you could get some confidence, you could build up some momentum for life. But now I think young people are more and more comparing themselves to the other 8 billion people on the planet. And we've talked about this before, that whatever you do, you'll find that there's an infinite number of people who are much better than you out there in the world. And so if you're always comparing yourself to those people, you'll always feel that you're not even ready to get started yet. Your life is not valuable and not meaningful in the way that you want it to be.
Yeah, very true. Yeah, and so what do we do against that? Like, how can we navigate that kind of unfair comparison? Because I remembered you talking to me about it earlier, and you made a very nice analogy between if you see the raw footage of a movie and you see the finished product of a
Yeah,
movie. So when you see a movie, the finished product, it's on screen, you're in a theater, it's beautiful. It's like, wow, everything, all the scenes, the pacing is great, the acting is great. But then compare that to the editor's table when you see all the raw footage of all the scenes and the actors doing it 3 times again, and it looks very amateuristic and not at all polished. And so that's actually our real life. It's the behind the scenes raw footage. And we are trying to compare that to the finished product of an edited YouTube video of somebody's vlogging about their perfect day. And so that is actually what's going on. We don't see the behind the scenes of that other person where they had a difficult interaction, or they felt a pang of jealousy, or they were insecure about something. That's all edited out of the ultimate, polished video. But it's definitely there in their everyday life. Like all
yeah,
human beings, they go through these negative emotions, they struggle. Everybody struggles, and we don't see that. So we think, oh, their life must be perfect. But
yeah.
that's not the case.
No, exactly. And this game of comparison is a really, especially this online version of the comparison game, is really an unfair competition. And what I like to think about there is that the idea is that you're not quite ready to start living your own life here. And to me, that's such a tragedy, where there's, like, I love that saying that what is the most valuable piece of real estate in any city? And the answer is the graveyard, because all of the greatest ideas, all of these amazing companies, all of these amazing businesses, all of these amazing works of art are all buried there because those people took them to the grave with them. Rather than bringing them out into the world and manifesting them, they took all of those things to the grave because they didn't really feel as though they were quite ready to get started on that big idea, on that big dream, on that vision that they had. And I really want people to understand that at all times you are the main character of the story of your life. You're not a supporting character in someone else's life. You are the main character in your own life, and in the story of your life, you are the protagonist. And so there's no one who's going to come along and save you from yourself, from your indecision and your lack of clarity. It's only going to be by you taking action and actually starting to move forward in your life that your life is going to start to look like the lives of these glamorous people doing glamorous things online. And at the end of the day, that's even not what you're aiming for, but you want to feel as though that you have the agency to start creating things in the world. And one of the things is when you see someone else's life, it looks like they knew what they were doing. Like when you see people have had very successful lives and you read the story, you're looking at it all in reverse. And so it makes sense. You're like, oh, I see. And when they made this decision, that was clear that that was going to lead to this new job opportunity, or that was going to lead to them meeting this person. When they made that decision, they didn't know any of those things. They were doing it on a wing and a prayer. They had a hunch that they needed to do something, that they needed to become something more in their own lives. And so they did it, and it worked out for them. But it only worked out because they actually were willing to stand up in their life and take action. And so my invitation to people is to be bold and to start living your life before it's too late, because there is no one who's going to come along and live your life for you. There's going to be no one who's going to manifest your dreams and manifest your visions for a better life if you don't do it yourself. So get out of the game of paralysis and watching other people's curated lives and begin acting, because as soon as you start taking action in your life, you'll start a chain of events that you cannot predict the outcome. And that's what all of these other people living these great lives did. They actually started making choices, making decisions, because it's very safe to not do that. You're keeping yourself safe because you can't fail if you don't try. If you haven't even started writing your novel, or trying to build the company that you want to build, or opening the business, it can never fail because it only exists in your imagination. And that's
Yeah.
that's very convenient for you, because then you never have to face the hardship and the difficulty of actually doing the hard thing and potentially failing. But it's also completely unsatisfying to live a life with all of these dreams and visions that you're too afraid to act out because they might fail. So
Yeah. I read about a
comparison.
guy once who was yeah, I read about a guy once who had a dream of becoming a novelist, and he once invited this was from the perspective of an actual author who met this guy. So this author had published a few books, and then he met this guy who was, I think, a teacher of his. And then the guy said, "Yeah, I also am an author, and I actually haven't published anything yet." And then he took him to the attic, and he had a whole cardboard box full of manuscripts of books that
Mm,
he'd actually written, but he never dared to publish them. He just hadn't had the
mm,
courage. He said, "Ah." And so he had all these written books that were never published. And the author felt so sad about this. He said, "Oh, I don't think he was a published author back then, but that gave him the determination. I'm never going to be like this man.
yeah,
This was so sad. This was like the guy on the cemetery with all these unwritten books." So,
yeah,
and I think when you start acting, the first bit of satisfaction, the first glimmer of success will immediately kill all your jealousies of the people who've achieved it, because
yeah.
you get a taste of the goal itself in that moment, and that gives you the satisfaction to keep going. And the fact that you've started that gives you enough satisfaction to not fall prey to these unfair comparisons.
Yeah, because I think that's what you'll find. If you look at people who don't suffer from jealousy, they are people who are too busy living their own life to have space in their life for jealousy. If you are so committed to your own life and making things happen and getting out there into the world and living your life, you don't have the time and the energy to be looking around at your rivals and competitors and to be worrying about them, because you've got important decisions to make. You've got projects on the go. You've got things to do. But when you end up just watching life and standing back on the sideline and playing the game of comparison and just commenting on other people's lives and critiquing the people who are actually doing things, then you've got all the time in the world to feel jealous and envious and bitter and resentful. So if you want to fill up that space with something really positive, it's like get out there and start living the most dynamic and the most full life you can. And as soon as you do that, as soon as you start on that journey and embark on that adventure, you'll find that your thoughts about other people and your worries and your jealousy will have very little room to grow.
Very true. And so let's dive into the spiritual strategies of how to
Yes.
overcome jealousy. And these are also things I picked up from Sri Chinmoy's writings. One of the first ones is deep meditation. Deep meditation is going to solve your jealousy problem once, because in one sense, because you become aware of it. So I guess many people will not be aware of their jealousy. Like they won't call it jealousy even. They don't even know. They're just perhaps thinking about another person quite a lot. But deep meditation, it has this knack of becoming aware of the negative qualities that are inside you. And then by deep meditation, another thing that happens is you actually bring light into your problems. So you invoke peace, you invoke light. And these qualities, peace and light, they're not just some vague or abstract terms. They're actual realities, they're inner realities, and they have the capacity to transform the negative qualities into positive ones. So deep meditation is one. What do you say?
Yeah, and I think from deep meditation as well, we're going to get more silence in the mind, and like with doubt, jealousy really breeds in the mind, and so it's one jealous thought leads to another jealous thought, leads to a further jealous thought, and if you can bring more stillness into the mind, if you can make the mind a place where the thoughts come less frequently, and when they do come, you have more space to become aware of them and to decide whether you give them attention or you simply let them float on by. That is a place that allows you to deal with your mind world and your thoughts much in a much higher way than if you're just simply caught up with each thought as it comes. You put all of your attention on it and you just get carried away with one thought after another. So that creating of silence and space in the mind is a really powerful tool to transform this jealousy as well.
Super. The second one is to love God or love the divine. Because if we are jealous of somebody, we're jealous of a capacity, we're jealous of a quality. But that quality comes from somewhere, and the divine, you could say, it's the root of all qualities and all capacities. The all soul, the divine God, is the root of our existence. And if we love the root, then we don't become jealous because we feel that actually we are one with the root of all capacities. We're one with the root of all qualities. So how can we be jealous if we see a beautiful branch? Because we know that, hey, that whole tree actually belongs to us. We also sprouted from that tree. We are also a branch on that tree. But it's like the fingers of your hand. The thumb is much stronger than your little finger, than your pinky. But your pinky is not jealous of the thumb because it's realized its oneness. It's realized it's on the same hand. And so they may have different qualities, different capacities, but they have realized we are actually on the same, we share the same roots. So love of God, love of the divine is also a spiritual strategy.
Yeah, and I really like that. It reminds me of one of our favorite Stoic philosophers was the great Marcus Aurelius, and he had a great saying that what stands in the way becomes the way. And so when
Mm.
we're thinking in my spiritual life, I want to be all love. I want to be love, just overflowing love for creation, for all of being. And I could feel that, but if it wasn't for this annoying person that is always getting in the way and causing me this pain and heartache, and they're trying to steal my friendships and they're transcending me. So that person is getting in the way of my life of love and joy and peace and happiness. And what do we realize there? We realize that person is not getting in that way. The person is the way. If we really claim that we want to become a loving, truly loving and compassionate person, then that person is the perfect person to practice on. Because a lot of people would say, oh, well, if it just wasn't for these annoying people in my life, then I would be
Yeah.
so happy and I'd be loving and kind. But those people are the opportunity to learn to be loving and kind, because by learning to love them and to accept them and to not be jealous or envious or doubtful or whatever the quality is that's bothering us, these are the people that we can practice on. These are the people that will let us learn to transcend those parts of our beings, that will let us
Yeah,
learn
because
to.
they're kind of revealing the blind spots that you have, right?
Yeah,
That's what difficult people can do. And if
yeah,
you want to know about difficult people, we have an episode about how to deal with difficult people, like 2 episodes ago. So
yeah,
that's another. It's a really good point.
yeah.
The third strategy is to feel or cultivate the quality of oneness. Now, this is connected to the previous one of loving the divine, but feel oneness. Feel that when you see somebody who's a really good actor or who's a really good soccer player, feel with your oneness that you are the one playing, you are the one singing. And this is not a mental hallucination. We are all one, but it's definitely a bit more difficult to cultivate oneness because once again, we have to practice deep meditation in order to really cultivate the quality of oneness. Oneness grows in the spiritual heart. That is the fount of all oneness. And so we actually have to go to our spiritual heart, preferably every day for a few minutes and concentrate on the spiritual heart. And this feeling of oneness will spontaneously come to the fore. It's the same feeling that young children have, right? Young children are completely in their heart. They have not developed their thinking or reasoning mind yet. And so you can see children, they connect in a very natural way with other children, even with adults, even with strangers. They can come up to somebody and immediately start being so spontaneous and being completely themselves. And this oneness is that what really can help us overcome jealousy. It's going to take a bit more effort than the psychological methods, but it's definitely a long-term solution.
Yeah, and as we've talked about as well, oneness is the language of the heart. So if we're trying to get away from our mind, which is causing and creating all of this jealousy and doubt and all of these problems, we want to take refuge in our heart. And one of the signs that we are living from the heart is we start to feel a sense of expansion and a sense of connection and a sense of oneness. And if we want to zoom out a little bit and we want to see the humanity as one race, one giant organism, like then we would see that anyone developing their capacity or improving the standard of humanity, that's a huge victory for humankind, for all of being here on Earth, is when other people come to the fore and show their best qualities. That's actually a victory for all of us. And so if we can try and expand our sense of being from just this limited, finite, physical form that I'm existing in this particular moment, and if we can expand and connect to all of being around us, then when we see other people doing well, instead of something to want to try and bring them down, we want to celebrate that. We want to help lift them up. And that's one of my points as well, is you're only going to achieve so much in your own life. You only have so much time and energy and capacity. So if you think that all of the joy in your life will come only from your own achievements, your joy in your life will be very, very limited, because it will be limited by your own capacities. Whereas if you can learn to feel real oneness with the people around you, with your friends, with your family members, with your community, even with your countrymen, or even perhaps if you can go to the state of the whole world, like whenever anyone does something great, you can celebrate that as an achievement for existence and consciousness. And that allows you to experience so much more joy, so much more meaning and deep satisfaction. And so whenever I see people doing well in the world, if I can identify my oneness with them and feel a connection and feel a oneness with them, then I can celebrate their achievements as well. And that makes my life so much better.
That's lovely. It's a great thought. Now, finally, the fourth strategy I'd say is gratitude. And Sri Chinmoy has written so much about the quality of gratitude and how magical it is in transforming life. But gratitude is so pure, so positive that when you feel gratitude, jealousy just cannot breathe there. It's like poison. It's like uh, an antiseptic to jealousy.
It's like a
And
weed
a
killer.
way to, yes, 100%. It's the ultimate weed killer for jealousy.
Yeah.
And the way to feel gratitude is to count your blessings. So feel how many times you've been blessed in life, how many beautiful things are in your life, and just to really bring them to the fore, um, and really cultivate that feeling of, wow, I have a roof over my head, I have food on the table, I have friends or a community, I have this particular quality or talent or whatever. There's always something to be grateful for. You can feel the birds whistling in the trees. You can look outside at the beautiful nature that's there, or perhaps wherever you're living, you can find a beautiful place and just surround yourself with all that beauty and blessings that you have. And so what do you say about that one, the gratitude one?
Yeah, I really like that was the final one. So I was thinking that maybe oneness would be the final tool. But yeah, gratitude, as we've talked about many times on this podcast, gratitude is one of the most beautiful things. And whatever you're wanting to achieve in your life, and however you're wanting to transform yourself, gratitude will help you do that. Gratitude is such a miracle power here on earth. And it's great because gratitude is becoming much more prominent in the world. Like everyone has these ideas of doing a gratitude journal, or just thinking about gratitude, or every morning or every evening just trying to be grateful for some of the things in your life. So it's something that is, people are starting to realize that the time for gratitude is now. It's not sometime in the future. It's not that we have to wait until we've achieved something more than we have right now. Like right now is the perfect moment to offer gratitude.
Yeah, and if you find it difficult to find something you're grateful for, just think about this one. Things could be worse, and be
Exactly.
grateful for the fact that they aren't worse. So you
Yeah.
can even be grateful for that. And so, I guess that wraps up our discussion today about jealousy.
Yes.
Vajan, you are in Nepal right now. You're in the Himalayas, and you're about to go on a journey of, I guess, 2 weeks. You're going to be running.
Yeah, so we're going to start on Wednesday. We're going to start heading towards the Everest region, and so yeah, we're going to be undertaking a very long and arduous journey through the Himalayas, through over many high mountain passes, but I will always be remembering of all the things I should be grateful for as I cross over those mountain passes.
That's great. The downside of that for our podcast is that internet connections are not the greatest in the Himalayas, and so
Right.
we'll have to pause the podcast. We'll have an episode this week, but then when are you back down in this civilized world again with
I
internet
think
connections?
I think in 2 weeks' time we should be fine.
Okay, great. So we'll probably skip a week. But dear listeners, if you feel you're going to miss us, we have a whole back catalog full of interesting episodes. And the great thing about our episodes is they're not time bound. We're not commenting on actual events or news or whatever. You can just go back and listen to them, and they'll be as recent or as actual to the present moment as any other news podcast will be. They won't be outdated.
They're timeless classics, aren't they? You can listen to them
That's
over and
what I
over
wanted to
again.
say. Oh, they're evergreens.
Yeah.
So that brings us to the end. Thank you again for joining us on the journey. And if you like our content, subscribe, leave a comment, rate us on your podcast app, tell a friend, and we'll see you in 2 weeks. Thank you.
All right. Thanks a lot.